Peter Connelly, a 15-month-old child, was left to die by his mother and her partner due to catastrophic medical errors and police corruption. Instead of resigning over the scandal of negligence, and instead of initiating an investigation into the doctors and specialists involved, the officials were preoccupied with blaming each other to protect their jobs. The famous picture of Peter Connelly shows him happy, smiling with blonde hair and blue eyes. However, by the time of his death, he had suffered horrific physical abuse that the British courts had never seen before. His injuries included a broken spine that left him paralyzed from the waist down, 8 broken ribs, bite marks, missing fingers and nails, and bruises on his forehead and cheek and nose and lips and chest and legs and lower back and buttocks. The 15-month-old was punched in the face so hard that he swallowed one of his front teeth. On August 3, 2007, when paramedics arrived at the home in Pinchers, Tottenham, North London at 11:30 a.m., the child had already been dead for several hours. While paramedics were trying to transport him to the hospital, his mother Tracy Connelly asked the ambulance to wait while she fetched a pack of cigarettes. Her boyfriend Stephen Barker and his brother Jason Owen stood quietly by the front door, indifferent to the situation. The subsequent investigation would reveal a series of shocking errors committed by the doctors and police over the previous 8 months. Peter was born in March 2006. He was only 3 months old when his biological father abandoned him upon discovering that his wife was having an affair with Barker, a racist criminal obsessed with Nazi memorabilia and pornography. Shortly after the new lover moved into the family home in Finsbury Park, North London, Peter began to show bruises and scratches on his skin, revealed during routine visits by Dr. Jerome Olquicki. However, Tracy Connelly claimed that her son Peter had sensitive skin and bruised easily. On December 11th, Peter was admitted to Whittington Hospital with a head injury, bruises on the bridge of his nose, his right shoulder, and his buttocks. In response to questions about the finger marks found on the child's body, the mother said they were from holding him and playing with him by throwing him in the air and catching him. She also claimed that the boy enjoyed rough and tough play. When the police questioned her on suspicion of abuse, Haringey Social Services listed Peter as at risk, and when they visited the home, they found it dirty and smelling of urine, unaware that Barker was living there. It was decided to let the child stay with Angela Godfrey, a church worker and Tracy Connelly's best friend, instead of placing him in foster care. After a month, on January 26, 2007, Peter was allowed to return to live with his mother without any charges or warnings against her. The family moved to a new flat in Pinchers, Tottenham, and Peter was regularly visited by social worker Maria Ward and medical officer Paulette Thomas. Tracy Connelly and Angela Godfrey managed to convince Haringey Social Services that Peter enjoyed dangerous games. In a routine meeting in March, Gilly Christou, the team manager at Haringey Social Services, stated, "It seems his reaction to danger is non-existent, and his pain threshold is low." She added, "Therefore, he does not recognize danger or pain. Only his mother can prevent him. He does not understand or manage to stop himself." On April 9th, Peter was taken to the hospital with significant swelling on his head and bruises around his eyes and cheek. Despite these injuries, which Connelly claimed were caused by another boy pushing him into a stove, doctors focused on the possibility of meningitis and began treatment. The mother later explained, "I was told in March that if any more accidental injuries were found on my son, they would take him away from me. As a result, social services merely purchased a safety guard for the stove." Then, on July 1st, a social worker made an unannounced visit to the home and found Peter with bruises under his chin and a red mark under his eye. Tracy Connelly claimed that another 18-month-old child had hit Peter during a scuffle, leading to him being taken to the hospital again. Doctors examined the child and discovered more than 12 bruises on various parts of his body, including a fist mark on his leg. The mother was questioned by police 4 days later, but was released on bail for the second time. Once again, the clear evidence was ignored, and it was jointly decided by the police and social services to allow Peter to return home under the supervision of Angela Godfrey. Peter's condition rapidly deteriorated when Jason Owen and his 15-year-old girlfriend moved into the house in late June. He lost a lot of weight and developed severe infections on his scalp and ears, to the point where his designated caregiver refused to continue looking after him. The family doctor merely prescribed an antibacterial cream. During the time Peter spent with his biological father, he had lost nails from his fingers and toes. In court, the father said Peter had a bandage on his left hand, his head was shaved with scars, and he was very thin and exhausted. Tracy claimed that Peter had pulled out his own nails. The father continued his testimony in court, fighting back tears, describing how he returned Peter to his mother the next day, Sunday, July 30th. He added, "When I was about to leave, Peter screamed, 'Daddy,' to the extent that Tracy brought him back to me so I could say goodbye. That was the last time I saw him." Later that day, Tracy Connelly covered Peter's bruises with chocolate to deceive the social worker during a scheduled visit. The last chance to save Peter's life came on August 1st, when Dr. Sabah Al-Zayed examined him at the Child Development Clinic at St. Anne's Hospital in Tottenham. Unfortunately, she failed to detect his broken ribs and ignored the series of bruises on his back and legs. Dr. Al-Zayed later told the Old Bailey court that his symptoms were no different from those of any child with a common cold. The following day, August 2nd, 2007, the charge of physical abuse against Tracy Connelly was dropped. She was even offered a free trip to the seaside for psychological treatment. Peter spent that evening lying in his bed, face down and tightly wrapped in a blanket like a cocoon, while his mother and her husband were celebrating. When Tracy Connelly woke up at 11 a.m., Peter was already dead. Since Connelly, Barker, and Owen all denied any knowledge of the assault on Peter, it was impossible to determine who caused the child's fatal injury. However, during the trial at the Old Bailey, a 15-year-old girl who was in the house testified that she witnessed the repeated assaults on Peter. She said, "Stephen enjoyed hitting Peter on the head and making him scream. He liked pressing on his nails. He would often grab him by the throat, throw him onto the bed, hit his head, and shake him violently." She added, "When Peter acted up a little, Steve would shake him violently, bruise him, pinch him hard, and swing him by one leg like a fan, making Peter scream. He had a bruise on his eye because Steve did those things to him. He would put him on the spinning computer chair and spin it rapidly until Peter fell off and hit his head. Peter would sit for hours with his head between his legs, and whenever he tried to lift his head due to the pain, Steve would forcefully push it back down between his legs. Whenever Peter cried, Steve would punch him hard in the head." Tracy Connelly testified at the Old Bailey in late 2008, denying any knowledge of abuse toward her child Peter. After cross-examination, prosecutor Sally O'Neill summarized the situation in one sentence. "This child was almost used as a punching bag by the adults who were supposed to care for him, and you, as his mother, did nothing about it." Tracy Connelly was acquitted of murder by the judge, but was convicted of causing or allowing the child's death. She was sentenced to an indefinite prison term, with a minimum of 5 years, to protect her from public outrage before considering parole. Connelly had already spent nearly 2 years in custody awaiting trial. Jason Owen was also acquitted of murder by the judge and convicted of causing or allowing the child's death. He received an indefinite prison sentence, with a minimum of 3 years, to protect him from public anger before considering parole. Stephen Barker was acquitted of murder and manslaughter by the jury, but was convicted of causing or allowing the child's death. These verdicts, along with the negligence of Haringey Social Services, led to a massive public outcry. The public outrage was fueled by the media's inability to identify whether Connelly or Barker was the killer, sparking an online hate campaign against the pair. The media blackout was due to Barker facing a second trial for the rape of a 2-year-old girl during the same period Peter was being abused. After his conviction in April 2009, he was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum of 10 years behind bars. Tracy Connelly struggled with being overweight and had previously worked as a prostitute while battling drug addiction. Connelly couldn't keep a full-time job and spent most of her time on internet chat sites. She loved dogs and owned a German Shepherd named Lady, a Staffordshire Bull Terrier named Lucky, and had 3 daughters older than Peter. The house was found to contain many pornographic magazines and videos. The police discovered a series of notes Connelly had written to herself, filled with self-pity. In one of the notes she wrote, "Life is crap. I'm tired of letting people around me down." Jason was nicknamed Fat Boy when he was a child and was accused of raping an 11-year-old girl when he was only 13 years old. He was also a member of the National Front, and they were investigated in the case of a suspected racist attack on an Asian family. After Peter Connelly's death, Parker helped dispose of bedsheets by drowning them in a canal, then fled from the police and hid for nearly 2 weeks in the Ping Pong woods with the 15-year-old girl. He was finally arrested and investigated on August 15th and blamed Parker for hurting Peter. Owen was given conditional bail, but it was revoked midway through the trial after investigators learned he was trying to apply for a passport to flee the country. The sadistic Stephen Barker had no prior convictions, despite being suspected of harming 2 other children in the past. It is believed that he and his brother Jason Owen assaulted their grandmother to force her to give them money. The police found hunting knives and Nazi memorabilia, including helmets, swastikas, and daggers, in the home he shared with Tracy Connelly, along with martial arts weapons and a crossbow. During his police interrogation, Barker said, "If anyone says I confessed to killing Peter, they are lying because they are trying to cover up their own filth and make me a scapegoat." He added, "There are many things I could tell you about Jason and what he did in the past, but I'm afraid because he would definitely try to kill me." He also told his sister during her visit to him in prison, "Just 6 weeks with Jason, and he ruined my life."